love, unite, and empower people about soul health. So if you are new to my channel, this channel is for women that lead. If you lead in a household, a business, a cause, or a community, and for men who don't have a problem with that. I am here to help you defeat your number one enemy. Do you know what your number one enemy is? Well, I'm Nurse Blue, and I'm here to tell you what your number one enemy is because it's my number one enemy. Your number one enemy is chronic stress. And the best that you've probably been taught how to do is how to manage it or cope with your number one killer. I don't know. We don't cope with killers. We don't manage killers. We defeat killers. And that's what soul health is all about because 98% of chronic diseases here on planet Earth are preventable and reversible, and soul health is a solution. So today, I want to outline for you a soul toxin. A soul toxin is something that a thought, an emotion, a habit or behavior, a person, place, a thing that is contributing to chronic stress. I want to identify a soul toxin that you might have. If you have not had, if you don't have it, maybe you know somebody that's living with this soul toxin. And if you keep walking planet Earth, at some point you might encounter it, but we need to know how to get rid of it because it can lead to a major problem in your life. And I have a really great way in which we're going to get rid of it. Okay, so let me identify what this soul toxin is. It is living with regret. Living with regret. How many of you are living with regret? You did something that you're not proud of. Maybe you witnessed something that something happened and you did not step in and support whoever it is, and you living with that regret. Living with regret are the could have done better, the should haves, I should have did this, the would haves, if I would have listened. So those are the big mistakes that we may have encountered, that we may have made here on planet Earth, and we live silently, quietly, replaying the actions of ourselves or others. And what it can do is detrimental to our soul because it contributes to chronic stress. Okay, so because I am a spiritual activist, I am here to help you defeat chronic stress so you can become the best version of yourself. And let's get rid of that living with regret. So here's what we can do. With chronic stress, if you are living with regret, that means that you, quite frankly, are in a place where that's rooted in guilt. Guilt is a very low frequency, guys, on the vibrational frequency scale. So for those of you who are like, what is a vibrational frequency scale? Great question. As a human being, which we all have been taught, you are a spiritual being. That is really what you are. And as a spiritual being, there's rules to being a spiritual being. First of all, you're made of energy. Energy has rules. You cannot be created, neither can you be destroyed, but energy can be transformed. It can be transferred and it can be transmuted, right? So if you are going to defeat living with regret, that means you want to go after the soul toxin that it originates from. And that soul toxin is guilt. So there's a scale called the Map of Consciousness scale that was actually created by David R. Hawkins. He is an MD and a PhD in psychiatry, and he has an incredible book that I love called Power versus Force. And in my new book that you got to pick up, Freedom is a Frequency, I have that scale in here for you because outside of the scale that you have in your bathroom, the one that you may or may not have a good relationship with, the one that can tell you if you're doing a good job of taking care of your body, the one that you probably want to throw out the window from time to time. This one here helps you understand what kind of spiritual state of being you're in. The higher you go up this scale, the more you're living your best life. The lower you are on this scale, the more you are probably suffering from fear-based emotional states. So what I mean by fear-based emotional states that I'm speaking of, one of them is guilt, which we're going to talk about today. Also, It could be shame, it could be grief, fear itself, pride, apathy. It's quite a few, but we're going to focus on this one here, guilt, because I want to set you free today from living in guilt. See, that was something that I struggled with for many years of my life. And what I can tell you is when you are trapped in an emotional state of guilt, it lowers the frequency of your life. And I'm going to outline in just a moment some of the things that you can do to release that guilt. Our goal is to go from guilt to joy on that scale. So if you want your copy of the Map of Consciousness scale, I'm actually going to post a link, and that link will give you a free scale, will give you a free Map of Consciousness scale. I want you to save it on your phone, or I want you to print it out, but you definitely need it, okay? So when you look at the scale, guilt is 30, right? Joy is 540. So we want to go from 30 to 540, right? And part of how we're doing that, we're releasing that guilt. We are processing that guilt. We are loving our souls back into a state of wholeness in order to get to joy, right? So the first thing we must do, let me just tell you a quick story. This might be helpful to somebody out there. You know, I have certainly experienced a would've, a could've, and a should've a few times in my life. And it was through the soul health journey that I was able to truly process that. But something happened early on in my life, back in my college years. When I was growing up, one of my best friends was as a guy. He's no longer with us, but we became really good friends around the age of 14. And actually in college, we used to get together at least once a year where he would drive from Atlanta, because he went to school at Clark, drive to Hampton. And we would have a really great time he'd bring some of his buddies, and all of us would get together and have a great weekend, right? So one year he drove up with a new guy who, you know, this was the first time meeting him. He was actually coming to see a family member that attended my college. So he didn't really hang out with us a lot, but I met him for the very first time. Really nice gentleman. You know, you could just kind of tell they had a good heart, good head on the shoulders. And I just found him to be, you know, a great guy, right? So needless to say, when the weekend ended, they got back on the road and was headed back to Atlanta. And around 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from my friend who was calling me because in a panic. They had just had a terrible car accident. He was actually calling me from a police station in North Carolina, or maybe South Carolina, but it's one of the Carolinas. But it didn't end well. What happened, the gentleman who I just described was a friend of his that drove up there, really nice guy. He was driving, and in the middle of the night, it was a woman who obviously got into a fight with her friend or a boyfriend, partner, I don't know, but she ran out into the road on the highway, and they struck her, and she was killed instantly. Tragic accident. And oftentimes I think about this gentleman because his life changed right there. You know, and the reason why his life changed is because the guilt that one would have after, unfortunately, doing something that would result in the death of someone else. That's a hard pill to swallow in this life. And all of their lives were changed. But because he was the driver, then ultimately he would be the one that will live with that impact at a different level. I did not know him well. And but when I would check in with my best friend, I would ask about him, and he would tell me that he was not the same. And I didn't expect for him to be the same, right? But it might be someone out here who may come upon this video and you're living with a deep regret. Maybe you are holding a grudge or have held a grudge against someone and got the call that they were no longer with us here on planet Earth, and you're dealing with the regret that you didn't have a chance to reconcile. You didn't have a chance you didn't have the opportunity to build a bridge or to forgive them. You might be living with the regret of making a huge mistake by not being present, maybe in your son or your daughter's life. And now they've grown up and you see the error in your ways. Maybe you've made a regret by at a former version of yourself, you acted inappropriately or did something that was a mistake, and now you're living with the regret. And so that incident that I just shared with you was over 20 something years ago. And when we don't know how to release the pain of regret, then guilt can take our life away from us, right? So I refer to this book, Power versus Force, because what David R. Hawkins, what he says, what he teaches us about guilt, and I'm going to read a little bit from this book, just so you know that guilt, so commonly used in our society, is used to manipulate, it's used to punish, and it manifests itself in a variety of expressions, such as remorse. It also can manifest itself as self-recrimination, which is condemnation, where you're constantly angry at yourself. It may cause you not to believe in yourself. You suffer from low self-esteem and low self-worth, confidence. And guilt can go so far as it can result in a psychosomatic disease, meaning if you really remain fixed in that soul toxin of guilt, you may want to end your life. There are a lot of people who have committed suicide because of guilt. There are a lot of people who become accident prone because they're thinking back to the past, which removes their ability to be in the present moment because there was trauma attached to what they did, and they keep going back to the scene of the crime. And unfortunately, as I mentioned before, it's like a life sentence, because if you don't know how to process that pain, if you don't know how to move past that trauma, if you don't know how to forgive yourself or even forgive others, then guilt can definitely steal your life away. And also, here's what we also need to understand. Guilt is so lethal that it can provoke rage to a point where killing frequently is guilt being expressed. Okay, so we have to be very careful with this. And there's a lot of different things that unfortunately can lead us down this terrible path of chronic stress, that being rooted in guilt, it can lead to disease. It could possibly lead to disease. Why? Because guilt can take over the way we see things and how we see ourselves and others. It certainly keeps us in an emotional state that's unhealthy for us. And then when our mind and our emotions are not in alignment, our will, the things we do to ourselves and to others, will be impacted, right? And unfortunately, when we don't deal with our soul toxins, they're going to deal with us. And either they're going to force us to turn on ourselves, or they become pain projections. Well, we will hurt others with that guilt. You can definitely build a temper from guilt. And how you express that temper can certainly lead to something destructive that can impact somebody else. And that's definitely when it's a no-no. So I want to share with you an article because I want to be helpful to those of you who might be carrying guilt within. Let me just kind of share with you from this video from Psych Central, which I'm going to include in the description, some tips on how we can move past guilt. Number one, we have to learn how to forgive ourselves. Okay? You have to learn how to forgive yourself on a cellular level. Okay? So a lot of times we think that forgiveness is all about forgiving on a mental level, but we have to learn how to forgive on an emotional level. And part of doing that is try mental contrasting. Now, how mental contrasting, what that is this involves vividly imagining how things could have been, right? If you made a different choice. Now, I suggest if you're going to start doing that, you may want to seek some help from a coach, from a therapist. Some of these things, you will need some support. I would encourage you to get some support. So rather you want to work with myself, I would love the opportunity to assist you through this, or someone else. But when we start diving into these frequencies of guilt, There's a lot of pain attached to it, might be trauma attached to it, and you may want to work with someone to help you move through that. Here's another thing, making amends, reaching out and asking for forgiveness. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the other person is going to forgive you. And while oftentimes it would help you to release it on a different level if they would. If they don't, that's their spiritual walk, right? But even more so for those of you who may be carrying guilt for people who are no longer here, then writing a letter is what this article is suggesting, and which I have done as well. And writing a letter, someone who may have passed away, and you can either tear it up, you can burn it up, you can put it in a journal, but that helps to release some of that tension that's attached, some of that emotional energy, that heavy density that you might be carrying in your emotional state that's interfering with your frequencies. I also say find out how to extract wisdom from everything. So find the positive aspects of your current situation. Now, if you don't find a solution to releasing this guilt, here's what could happen. And this is when chronic stress becomes empowered by us not addressing our lower frequencies. What I mean by the frequencies of fear, the frequencies of anger, the frequencies of shame. And right now, we're talking about is guilt. So here's some of the things that can happen. It can lead to depression. It can lead to depression because the guilt becomes so heavy for you to carry. You begin not to believe in yourself. You begin to suffer from low self-worth, self-confidence, low self-confidence. And that, again, can lead to suicidal tendencies. So we want to definitely stay away from that. Increased anxiety. I struggled with anxiety for many years. It is something that actually is at the root of chronic stress, fear, and anxiety. So it could lead to that. I've already talked to you about, lack of self-esteem and confidence, lacking motivation, feeling hopeless. Honey, you don't deserve that. And neither is that going to work out well for you long term. So I want you to make a different decision. I want you to choose the medicine of joy. The Word of God says that joy is medicine for the body. And a broken spirit, it dries up bones. So when we are living in the state of guilt, we're living in the state of regret, that means we're living with a broken spirit. And the only way you can get back to wholeness is if you are committed to loving your soul back to health. And I'm committed to helping you do that. So here's 3 things I want you to do. All right? Number 1, I want you to grab your Joy Killer checklist. That's a free checklist that I created because the reason why chronic stress remains our number 1 killer and is at an all-time high because we have too many joy killers in our life. And definitely, as I talked about over the last few minutes here, regret is a huge joy killer. So after you get your free checklist, I'm going to post the link. Once you get your checklist, I want you to examine what's on that list and ask yourself, do I have some of these showing up in my life? Now, after you answer that question, and this is just a few of the joy killers, there's probably millions of them. Probably going to have to update this list every month. But starting right here, I want you to see if you're experiencing any of those. Now, if you are, I want you to take the next step and love yourself back to health. I want you to grab my new book. It's called Freedom is a Frequency. It's a joy journal because I want to help you achieve joy. And it's in this book that I identify the 5 simple steps to help you elevate your energy, elevate your health, peace, confidence, relationships, and abundance with joy. I've also included on page 8 your map of consciousness scale, which you definitely need. And it's a wonderful tool to help you understand how you can achieve joy. And so it's a musicology journal because, I got to infuse some music in there, honey. I am a sound healer. I'm a musicologist, and so we have great songs to support you in there with that. But so you grabbed your checklist. That's 1. Number 2, you're going to grab your new book, Freedom is a Frequency, so you can have more joy. And then the 3rd thing I want you to do, I want you to come and join me for a party. a joy party. I deserve joy party in the Soul Health and Wellness Club. That's where you can find me on Clubhouse. So I want you to download Clubhouse. It is such a cool app, guys. It's a free app. You may be on Clubhouse already because it became extremely big over during the pandemic. And we're still around. So come to the Soul Health and Wellness Club. That's your home for the soul. So we can really start releasing those lower frequencies and defeat our number one killer. And on Tuesdays, you can come to the I Deserve Joy Party. It's a sound healing experience on Clubhouse. It takes place noon on Tuesdays, Eastern Standard Time, okay? Or you can come to the self-love party. And I have my self-love parties on Wellness Wednesdays. So you can come there for the self-love party. No one is going to love you more than Nurse Blue for at least 1 hour. I'm going to beat your mother, your father, all your relatives, even your partner, your siblings, even your furry animals. No one's going to love you more than me. Not on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's not going to happen. So come and check those out. Okay, let me see. Oh, and if you are a woman in business, you deserve, and not only do you deserve, you need joy. Okay, so I have a party that takes place on Clubhouse again. It's so much fun. It's called the CEO Flow. And it is there through the CEO Flow that I empower you with information to build you, to love you, to unite us and empower us so you can be at your all-time high, which is a high frequency, to attract all that you desire to have, which if you're a woman in business, you want to attract abundance definitely into your life. You want to be operating not in the spirit of fear, but a spirit of a sound mind and power and sound mind. That's where you want to be so you could be in your CEO flow. Okay, so I gave you guys a lot of great tools so we can get on the path to helping you to release your guilt. And if you haven't done so by now, you want to give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and please subscribe to the channel because I am going to be identifying all of these soul toxins and how they show up in your life so we can defeat my number one enemy and yours too, chronic stress. Okay? All right, guys. So I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on Clubhouse. Look forward to you learning how to defeat our number one enemy. And here's why I'm highly motivated, because the more we decide to become the best versions of ourselves, honey, we can actually create heaven on earth when we vibrate at a frequency of joy. And I'm here for that because I refuse to live in hell, okay? So all I need is probably 144,000 of y'all operating in the spirit of joy, and we can change the game on planet Earth, all right? And I'm here for that. See you later. Bye-bye.